Good morning, students. I welcome you all for the introductory session on the subject International Business Dynamics. As of this semester's concerned, I mean to say your fourth semester's concerned, I'll be handling a core paper to you that is International Business Dynamics. Now, this subject is going to be a very important subject, something which helps you understand what's happening not only in your immediate circles but also on the macro perspective. See, to understand the subject better, let us first split up the terms of the subject itself. Firstly, we have international. International, which simply means that you will have to understand what happens in the global markets. It's not just a few selected markets. It is going to be all the markets together, which is being made in the form of a global market. And we need to understand how transactions, how interactions take place in this global context. Secondly, business. When we say business, business includes almost all establishments which are serving the commercial purpose. Thirdly, we have dynamics. When I say dynamics, it simply refers to the changes and the interactions that takes place in the field of international business. So international business dynamics is just to give you an understanding of as to what's happening in the international business context, how companies go global, what are the various opportunities that companies can take leverage of in the international context or in the global context. Now, all of these things together is what sums up into one subject called as international business dynamics. Okay, let us move on to the session. Now, under this, the first thing that I would want to discuss is about the modules, which is nothing but your syllabus coverage. Okay, now here, if you see, we have a total of 6 modules. Under that, all the modules are going to be focusing on different concepts altogether. Okay, so let us start with the discussion, the brief discussion on module 1 of as to what we'll be studying and covering in the future coming classes. Firstly, we are going to discuss about introduction to international business dynamics in the first module. Now here, we will be discussing about the evolution of international business, the drivers and challenges of international business when compared to that of the domestic business, national and organizational competitive advantage that companies can have over the world, which companies have what competitive advantage. It can be from the nation's perspective in terms of resource adequacy, cost of savings, cheap labor availability, access to raw materials at a lesser cost, all of these things. Or it can be the core competencies or competencies that a company can have at its organizational level. And then we also will have to go through and identify who are the key active players in the multinational business today. Here, it is going to be much of a practical study where we need to identify the various companies and brands which are having their presence in the international markets. And then we will also be discussing about a very important factor or a concept, I would rather say it as, that is the international environment of international business. Here, we are going to talk about the extraneous factors, that is the external factors, which includes political, legal, technological, cultural, demographic, and economic environment. So how each of these environmental factors have a bearing or an impact on the businesses that takes place on a cross-border transaction format. Now that is what becomes the focus here. And the next is, we are going to study about cross-cultural management, which is nothing but, we know that today we do not function in isolation. When I say we, I mean to say companies and brands do not function in isolation. We all work and function together as a single system or a hub system, which is called as global market, right? So we know that when we have transactions with different countries, what basically happens is each of these countries have differences in their language, in their orientation, in their approaches, in their strategies. Now, this itself can lead to problems of misunderstanding which can crop up. So what are we trying to do is, how do we effectively manage this cross-cultural differences amongst the different countries which participate in international business is what we understand by cross-culture management. Fine. And then we will also be discussing about the various levels of culture which we need to focus upon. And finally, we will be discussing about the various models which are being used today in order to support international managers to effectively handle, administer, and manage the various resources of businesses. Fine. Then we move on to the second module. Now, this module is going to be purely to do with globalization. Firstly, what do we mean by globalization? Globalization is nothing but it is like a process whereby all the individual small pocket markets get combined and clubbed into one big market called as a global market. So in today's world, it's obvious that we have to call or say include all the countries and all the markets as global market. You know why? Because we do not have restrictions on the movement of products, services, money, and people as well. Hence, what we basically do is we have this kind of a framework where we operate things on a multinational platform. Several companies, several brands, several origins, several places and markets, everything gets combined and made into one called as a global market, right? So that is what we understand by globalization. Now, let us see what are the various topics that we would discuss under this. Firstly, what are the various options available to go global? That is the roots of globalization. Second, the various modes of international business. For example, it can be licensing, it can be franchising, it can be turnkey projects, and many more, where we are just trying to find out what are the different modes or the ways in which you can enter the foreign country to start your business. Thirdly, organizing international business. To organize your business, which is present on a diversified manner in different countries, becomes a very big challenge. So how are we going to do this? What are the various factors to be considered to do this? Is it going to be a challenge? If yes, what is the intensity and depth of challenge that companies would face to organize their international business? All of these things will be discussed. And then international designs is nothing but the various proformas and formats and design options that we use to set up, establish, and run our business in the foreign markets. Next, factors influencing choice of design is going to be the various factors that we need to consider. We need to give keen focus to and accordingly decide what is going to be the best design or the format or the structure for you to establish and run your business in the foreign countries. Issues in organization design is nothing but the various problems, limitations, bottlenecks, and roadblocks that you are going to face when you come and make a good organization design for your company, which is going to go global or international in character. And then we know that whenever we are dealing with many countries, we know that every country has a set of rules and regulations which can be termed as the laws. We call it as land laws originated and executed in each of these countries. Okay, so sometimes we know that because of these differences in laws or differences in tax rate or differences in approaches and opinions, there is a very good potential for conflicts to arise, right? So we need to find out a way in which you can effectively handle and resolve conflicts that take place in the global markets, right? So there comes to the picture the concept of conflict management. Fine. So conflict management basically can include different kinds of methods or types of doing it. Reconciliation is one method. adjudication is one more method, arbitration issues is one more method, and also you must understand that you can take the help of supporting institutions which can favor you at times of crisis. And when you have problems which are not solved, then you need to go and approach these institutions which are going to give you some insights in helping you find solution to the problem that is already there. And then the last is going to be negotiations or trade negotiations. Okay, all of this will be discussed in detail. The next would be module 3, where we will be discussing about WTO and trading blocks. WTO stands for World Trading Organization, right? So the first is we will be describing the concept of WTO. We will be understanding about LPG, that is liberalization, privatization, and globalization, and its associated policies that is going to favor international business transactions. Secondly, we'll be discussing about the implications of WTO and LPG policies on India, especially India, because we need to know what's happening at the national level first. Only then you get to have that understanding and readiness for you to face what's going to happen in the international markets, right? And then we will also be discussing about regional trade blocks. What are the various regional trade blocks? What is the effect of these trade blocks, and so on and so. And we will also be understanding the integration between countries. How does this integration take place? What are the matter of considerations here? Levels of integration and impact of integration is also going to be considered. And then we will also be covering up on a very important topic. Now let me tell you, this can be an important question for your exam. That is international strategic alliances. So here we will be discussing about the concept of international strategic alliances, the nature, traits and features, the benefits to the home country and host country, the pitfalls or the limitations or the mistakes that you commit when you make a contract for international strategic alliances, the scope or the areas covered, and then how to make alliances work, keeping in mind sustainability, survivability, and profitability for companies. Fine. And then we go to module 4, which is to do with global trade and investment. Okay. Now let me tell you the first section. There are 3 sections, as you can see here. Firstly, you have theories of global trade and investment. Secondly, you'll have FDI, and third is going to be export-import trade. Fine. The first section, we will be discussing some very important tested and proven theories of global trade and investment, like mercantilism theory, theory of absolute advantage, theory of comparative advantage, factor endowment theory, product life cycle theory, and Porter's national competitive advantage theory. Fine. And then we come to FDI, where we need to know what is the concept of FDI. Okay. Here we should also understand to what extent FDI is essential for a country's economic prosperity. Fine. And then we need to understand certain other aspects under this topic, namely FDI in world economy. What is the contribution? What is the percentage of FDI in world economy? And what is the effect and consequence and aftermath of that percentage on the world economy? Horizontal and vertical FDI investments, and benefits of FDI to the home country as well as the host country, and FDI in the Indian scenario or Indian context. Fine. So here basically we will also be coming up with certain facts and figures and percentages, which is nothing but quantitative facts, which gives us even more clarity on what is the percentage of contribution and impact made for a particular country's economy. And then we go for EXIM trade, that is export-import trade transactions, where we will be covering upon certain topics like export and import financing, export marketing, EXIM policy, very important for exam, balance of payment, balance of trade conditions, again important for exam, and roles of institutions connected with EXIM trade. All of these things will be a part of module 4. Then we delve to the next module, that is module 5, which is to do with global ethics and e-commerce. So this is going to be a very simple module, yet informative, yet important ones. Okay. Number 1, we'll be discussing about social responsibility and ethical issues in international business, the concept of these things, the impact of these things, and the issues involved in these things. What are the burning issue in terms of ethics, ethical practices, and social responsibility of business firms in the international context? And then we will also be discussing about the national differences in ethics and social responsibility because every country has its own code of conduct and code of ethics. So what is right there may not be right here. Probably there can be a variation in the intensity of what is right and wrong also, right? So that is what comes under national differences, and we'll be going through it in detail. And then we go for codes of conduct for MNCs. Codes of conduct is nothing but a set of rules and regulations which governs, guides, and regulates the activities of MNCs, multinational corporations, companies. Okay, and then global e-business, where we are going to discuss about the conceptual analysis, advantages and disadvantages of electronic business on the global context as well as the Indian context. And we are also going to discuss on the e-commerce that is taking place in India. It is something where you find a lot of industries and brands who are investing huge sums of money into, not only in India but also in the foreign countries, right? And then we go to the last and the final module, that is module 6, which has to do with global business operations. Okay, so let me quickly tell you what are the topics that we'll be discussing. Number 1, global operations management and competitive advantage. It simply means how do we manage trade transactions and operations in the business point of view in a global context, and what is this competitive advantage that companies can have and use that as a tool for competency against competitors in the global context. Secondly, strategic issues in operations management, which basically covers 4 areas. Number 1, manufacturing management, logistics, procuring, and it can also include the cost function, which is also to be included, right? And then we talk about technology transfers, very important for your exam. And then issues arising out of technology transfers, again important. And then we go to the next one, that is marketing management. Here we will be discussing about the concept of marketing management, and then we are also going to focus upon the marketing activities that are being practiced in the international context or the global context. And then we will also be discussing about the benefits of international markets and the major activities in international marketing which is taking place even to this day, and what is the contribution of each of these activities to the economy's benefit or prospects, right? And then human resource management, again we'll be discussing the concept of HRM, the approaches of HRM in the international business context. Expatriation and repatriation process is very important again for your exam. Training, compensation, that is nothing but remuneration, and then industrial relations. All of these things will be included in the HR segment. Fine. By this, I have given you an overview of what has to be taught and explained in this subject. I hope you have understood the nutshell of this subject, I mean the framework of the subject. So now from the next class, that is my next video, will be on the first module of international business dynamics. Fine. So let me tell you students, from now on, it's serious time. Start studying, do a lot of research online. You need to also prepare for some facts, and then when I explain, it's easy for you to relate what you have done as research on that subject and topic with respect to what I explain it to you in the form of videos. Okay, I hope you've understood the basics, and once again, thank you all, and make sure that you are connected with me. Anywhere you have any confusion and doubt, please feel free to get back to me. I'll be giving you clarity even more. Fine. Thank you, students. All the best and happy learning.